I was really, really overwhelmed. I couldn't really hold it in, and I just tried to. The only thing that I tried to say to as many of them as possible was that I loved them, and how grateful I was, and that was about the only words I was able to get out at the time.
When you put them on for the first time, can you describe what that was?
It's pretty wild. The biggest shift, and I was telling them this today when we came back from the long weekend, was the most noticeable wild thing that I saw was getting to see the leaves on the trees for the first time. Getting to see how each tree is not just one unified color, that it's all these different streaks going through it. That was pretty wild, and that was different.
So you said before how, you know, the whole, I guess, part of the Joseph and Technicolor dream coat is that he wears this colorful coat. So how did this conversation come up with your students?
It had just sort of, just in passing, it had sort of come up where we were talking about, I think we have a closet back in the choir room that has a bunch of different colored show choir dresses that we've used over the last few years, and we were going through it looking at something, and one of the kids, you know, mentioned that, oh, you need to grab that dress, and, you know, I'm saying, okay, I need a little bit more help than that, can you clarify? And that's sort of how they became aware that I actually had struggled with this for a while in my life. Yeah, so they decided to do this really wonderful thing for me out of nowhere, and it's just about one of the most memorable days I think I've ever had, and one that I'm going to hold on to for a really long time.
What does it mean to feel like, I mean, you've affected these kids, these students so much that they're willing to do this? I mean, that's got to be an amazing feeling.
It is. I mean, it's a really wonderful feeling. I mean, you spend so much of this job is just grinding day in and day out, and going back to work and making sure that everything's where it needs to be, and making sure that you're working towards the same goal. And you just do that 24/7, just nonstop. This is one of those jobs, the 40-hour-a-week job that takes 60 hours. And so through that whole process of performing this show, we all, and it always happens with the cast, and it's one of my favorite qualities about doing shows with them, is that you develop this family, you develop this community with each other, and you just begin to care about each other, and you know, it's hard to describe, but I can tell you that we feel it every day, I mean, in the magnet program in one way or another.
And what was it like to find out that you were colorblind in the first place? Well,
so that's an interesting thing, because it's one of those things that when I was growing up, I didn't pay attention that much to what clothes matched, that kind of thing. If I was in something silly walking out the door, my mom would stop me and tell me to go change because I'd done something wrong. But it's one of those things that until you're really tested for it, you don't really know that you're not super aware that it's there. You notice that you have an issue with colors, you notice that you have an issue differentiating between different colors, but it's not something that is acutely aware to you until it's brought to your attention.
So can you describe like a little bit like what you were able to see and what colors you were able to see?
Mostly, so my biggest issue is with reds. So the biggest issue for me is differentiating between different red colors, or things that have red in them, sort of stuff like that. And it's when they're up next to each other I can't really differentiate very well. And with what the glasses actually do is that it actually cancels out some of the wavelengths that overlap. So it cancels out the part that keeps me from being able to differentiate, which means that now I suddenly have a really stark contrast, and I can sort of tell the difference. It's a pretty wild experience the first time you see it. I couldn't, for about 6 to 8 hours after I got the glasses, I had trouble putting them on without getting teared up. Because it's just such partially because of the experience of it, partially because you suddenly have like this level of awareness about the world around you that you didn't have before, which is an odd feeling. And then the other side that kept getting to me was just what a tremendously wonderful gesture it was. And to know that you put in this so much time with these rehearsals and with these performances and things like that, and it's all this stress that you don't always, in the heat of it, and you know, when you're moving quickly trying to get things done, you don't always stop to really think about it or appreciate how much they do care about you, and you just sort of get it in little moments in passing. this is an amazing gift to me, because this is something that I can physically hold in my hand. This is something that I have anytime something gets difficult or something gets stressful, or we're working hard late into the evening. I'm gonna hold on to that. I'm gonna hold on to that thought, and I'm gonna hold on to that day. And it's always gonna mean just as much as it did then.
Have you looked at the costumes?
Yeah.
Have you seen the?
I've gone for a little stroll back through our costumes. Yeah, it's crazy. I'm trying to save that, so I'm trying not to see too much of Joseph right now, because we're actually going to be going to state at Troy University, and so the plan is that one of the reasons why they gave it to me was that they wanted me to be able to see the show in full color when we actually perform it for state, for competition.
So you're saving a little bit for yourself.
I'm trying to save it as much as possible, but it is very tempting. Yeah, particularly the actual Joseph coat itself.
Have you been carrying around the glasses case?
I have, yeah. Actually, the thing about them that's interesting is that they're really built for outside. So I mean, the first day I just wore them driving home, and that was a crazy experience. Yeah, and then going for a walk with the dog and stuff like that, and actually getting to see places around your home in a way that you haven't seen them before is really a very wild experience.
When you put these on, you had all of the students in front of you. They're singing to you. You had colored balloons on the ground. What's the first thing you remember changing when you put them on in front of everybody?
It was too much. Like the first feeling I had was just the overwhelming emotion of it. It was just, yeah, I can't. It's really hard to describe, honestly. It's one of those situations where you think about it happening, and I had done research about the glasses, and I had seen videos of people, looking through them for the first time. And I was always thinking in my head, maybe that's something I need to buy eventually and see what that's about. But then when you actually put them on for the first time, it's crazy. It's a really, really crazy experience. I can't even really describe it. I just know that my immediate reaction was that I just couldn't stop crying. And I was just really overwhelmed.